Welcome to the Slut Next Door podcast, where we dive deep into desire, unravel kinks and fetishes, and explore the deliciously naughty side of self-discovery. I'm Beatrix Vale, an erotic audio creator, and your guide to all things kinky and curious. So let's begin. Hello and welcome to the Slut Next Door. I'm Beatrix Vale. I create hypno content, audio only, and someone who knows just how deep erotic influence can run. Now, today's episode is going to ask a question that I've definitely heard in confessions, DMs, late night spirals. And that question is, am I addicted to Femdom? So maybe you found yourself constantly chasing that next piece of content, craving control, or longing for the feeling of being owned. Maybe it excites you, or maybe it even worries you. In this episode, we're going to break it all down. I'm going to answer, what does it really mean to be addicted to Femdom? How does intense submission affect the brain? And when does desire become dependency? And is that always a bad thing? We're going to explore how erotic hypnosis, repeated exposure, and emotional vulnerability play a role in deepening that connection to dominant women. So, whether you are curious, concerned, or just captivated by your own reactions, this episode will help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. And as always, I invite you to subscribe here on YouTube, leave a comment with your thoughts or experience, and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. And you can find all of my erotic femdom content and hypnosis files at www.missbeatrix.com. So let's dive in and take an honest look at your craving for control, submission, and the seductive pull of female dominance. So when we talk about being addicted to femdom, we're often blending metaphor with reality. It's common for submissives to say things like, I can't stop thinking about it, or I need her voice to function. But what's really going on beneath those cravings? So, from a psychological standpoint, addiction involves compulsive behavior despite negative consequences. It often comes with a cycle of craving, reward, guilt, and repetition. So while most people aren't clinically addicted to femdom, the brain can absolutely respond to erotic dominance in ways that mimic addiction. So let's break that down. So femdom experiences, especially when paired with erotic audio or even visual content like video clips or ritualistic habits or submissive play, can stimulate a powerful dopamine response. And that is your brain's reward chemical, dopamine. When you listen to a file that pushes your buttons, triggers a fetish, or reinforces a submissive identity, you're not just turned on, you're being neurologically rewarded. And that pleasure loop can become incredibly compelling. And it doesn't take long at all to develop a kind of erotic conditioning. So if you're regularly listening to hypnotic dominance, being praised or degraded in just the right way, and climaxing to a very specific tone of voice or type of control, your body and brain start to associate the experience with release, with safety, and with purpose. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can create a dependency driven arousal where it becomes difficult to get turned on without that specific femdom stimulus. So, my suggestion to you is if I'm really tapping into something that is very familiar, just ask yourself these questions. Like, do I find myself seeking out femdom content more frequently than I used to? Do I feel anxious or restless when I go without it? Is this fantasy something that enhances my life, or is it starting to interfere with other parts of it? And when I ask these questions, or having you ask them yourself, they aren't meant to shame. They're simply points of reflection because when erotic power exchange is done with awareness, it can be one of the most rewarding, growth filled experiences a submissive person can have. But without that awareness, it can start to feel like you're spiraling, unsure whether you're chasing pleasure or simply avoiding discomfort. And when you bring in the awareness, you still are holding some self control. You're recognizing your behaviors and your patterns, your feelings and emotions. So let's move on to why does submission, especially to powerful, dominant women, feel so necessary to some people? Why do these desires go beyond fantasy and start to shape the way someone experiences intimacy, stress relief, or even self worth? So, we're going to explore what's underneath those things. For many submissives, the longing to serve or surrender isn't just about kink, it's about emotional regulation, identity, and in some cases, healing. So when you engage in femdom content, especially guided, immersive experiences like hypnosis or role play, you're doing more than just getting off. You're giving your mind permission to release control, to give your mind a chance to rest. And in a world where so many people feel overwhelmed, pressured, or emotionally disconnected, that kind of surrender can feel essential. And femdom becomes a space where you're allowed to be vulnerable, where you're told what to do, how to feel, even when to breathe. And for some, that's the first time they've ever felt truly seen. And there's also the power of repetition and ritual. So, like erotic routines, like listening to a file before bed, edging during a specific trigger phrase, or kneeling to a voice you trust create a neural imprint. So the more you do it, the more your body learns to respond. And then submission becomes like a reflex. And when those rituals are disrupted, it can feel like something is missing. So this is where the term addiction starts to get a little murky because what you might be experiencing isn't addiction in the clinical sense, but emotional dependency, that need for that dynamic, for the structure, the praise, or the humiliation, or the sense of being owned or guided. And for some people, this becomes a very deep emotional craving, almost like a relationship, even if it's one sided. So, I have some questions that you can ask yourself in terms of this topic. So, a question you can ask yourself is this fantasy helping me access something I can't find in daily life? Or do I feel emotionally safe in submission? Or am I chasing it to numb, to escape, or to avoid parts of myself? And again, like last time, there's no shame in asking these questions or in your answer. In fact, just asking yourself the question puts you in a healthier, more self aware place than so many. Femdom, it has the power to awaken parts of you that society can often try to shut down. Like you're longing to please, you're longing to be useful, you're longing to feel chosen. And when those needs are met through repetition and arousal, the bond can feel unbreakable. And in my opinion, not every intense desire is a problem. In fact, I strongly believe that deep submission can be healthy, cathartic, even transformative when practiced with intention. But sometimes that same intensity can slip into territory that leaves you feeling anxious or depleted or out of control. So, how do you know the difference? When is your devotion to femdom a sign of authentic submissive identity? And when is it masking something that needs attention? So, let's break that down. Let's break it down with some potential red flags. So, the first red flag could be you neglecting responsibilities. So, are you skipping sleep, missing work, or avoiding important tasks to indulge in femdom content? Another red flag, you feel compelled rather than drawn. So, if you find yourself unable to stop even when you want to, especially if it's interfering with other parts of life, that is worth exploring within yourself. Another red flag is that you feel guilt, shame, or even distress afterwards. Because a fulfilling submissive experience usually brings a sense of peace or grounding. If you're left feeling empty, panicked, or disgusted with yourself, that is a signal that something's off. And perhaps you need to do a little self exploration to see where those things are coming from. Another red flag is if you're always, every single time, chasing the next hit. So, like any habit, it's easy to escalate, seeking more extreme content, deeper humiliation, or longer sessions just to feel the same level of arousal. It's time to press pause and think about what is it that you're trying to fill the void with. Another red flag is you can't enjoy intimacy without it. So if you're struggling to connect outside of femdom or can't orgasm without it, you may have conditioned yourself into a dependency loop. But I want to be very, very clear. None of these signs mean that you are broken. They just mean it's time to get curious, to pause, and to ask yourself, am I in control of my submission or is it running me? So let's talk about signs of, or what it looks like to have a healthy level of submission to femdom. So signs of super aligned, healthy submission is if you feel grounded and fulfilled after submissive experiences, not ashamed or fragmented. Another sign is femdom content adds to your life instead of replacing it, instead of it becoming, who you are as a consumer of femdom content, and that's all you are. Another sign of healthy submission is you can set boundaries with what you consume and how often. So you still do have some control, even though Femdom is all about giving up control, of course. But if you still have the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to take a day off, and that doesn't become some inner struggle for you. Another sign of healthy submission is you making conscious choices about who you submit to and why. I have seen that time and time again where I can tell when someone comes to me and they're just filling a void, like an application. Like they've said the same things to so many DOMs. On the other hand, I can tell when someone comes to me with purpose, like I heard your file and I just felt compelled to serve you. I want to, worship you. I want to just consume everything you have to give me and grow from it. That is a healthy sign. Another sign of healthy submission is when your submission is a source of joy. Like sometimes people take sex and intimacy and porn way too seriously. It's all supposed to be fun and enjoyable. So do you find joy within it? Do you find identity? And not that is to say like, oh, I'm a submissive male and that's all I am. What I mean by that, identity as in you are able to understand yourself better. You're able to understand your emotions better. You're able to face your stressful life in a better way because of the content, because it helped you relax or it helped you tap into that submissive side of yourself that might be neglected. And within that too, do you find a sense of clarity when you are submissive? Those are all fabulous, healthy signs of submission. So this isn't about labeling yourself as addicted or not addicted. It's about understanding your patterns and deciding whether they align with the life that you want. Because erotic submission should enhance your world, not replace it. And if you are in a period of spiraling or extreme dependency, you can always reclaim control without letting go of the power of surrender, because that becomes a whole nother loop that's not very good that I see time and time again. Men trying to quit porn or trying to quit femdom, and they typically always come back and they get in this relapse cycle that's not very healthy, and it makes me sad. It really does, because it means that there's something, within their brain that's telling them, you shouldn't be into this. This is disgusting. You're gross for liking this, or you don't need this. And that makes me sad because I don't want anyone to ever feel bad for being into something that they can't help. It's really sad. So the relapsing, goodness, that's a whole nother episode, really. But if one thing, I do hope that you can take away that sometimes if you do feel like you're in that period of spiraling, allow yourself to step back and really take a moment to look within yourself. Replay this episode, ask yourself those questions and see if you come within, answers within yourself that help you understand yourself. So by now, you may have realized I hope you have realized, your connection to Femdom can run deeper than arousal. Maybe it feels like comfort or even structure or purpose. And while it's easy to label these cravings, especially in a world that tells you that erotic dependence is shameful, I want to offer a different lens. So, what if your need for femdom isn't a sign of dysfunction, but a sign that you've discovered what truly reaches you? So, there's a difference between unconscious addiction and conscious surrender. So, what I mean by that is when you make the choice to give yourself to something or someone with awareness, boundaries, and reverence, it's no longer about losing control. It's about aligning with a part of yourself that feels whole only in that dynamic. And so many submissives report that their relation with femdom has either helped them heal from emotional shutdown or even trauma, or it's given them clarity around their desires and identity. Even femdom or submitting has created a space to explore deep vulnerability in a very safe way, or even taught them how to listen, obey, or let go of ego in healthy ways. And these are not signs of destruction. Submitting through whether it's erotic hypnosis, even intense kink dynamics like cuckolding or chastity, all kinds of ways to reach this. Like all of these things can serve as like a portal to something deeper within. And what you'll find is your authentic self, a part of you that thrives in surrender in a space when you're not just chasing pleasure, you're finding peace. So if you're able to answer the questions that I've asked throughout this episode and you feel confident that your dependency isn't acting in a destructive way towards yourself, but you're still asking yourself, well, am I addicted to femdom? Just try asking yourself, what does this craving do for me? Where does it bring me back to myself? And what am I really seeking when I press play on that file or when I kneel for a woman's command? Reframe the craving. Sometimes what looks like addiction is actually just longing, finally given permission to speak. So, yes, you might need it. You might crave femdom every day, but if it brings clarity, healing, purpose, or even joy, maybe that's not addiction at all. And in the same hand, if your enjoyment of femdom isn't creating space in your life where you're avoiding your responsibilities, getting in the way of things, causing you extreme shame, maybe it's not addiction. And maybe it's just devotion. So, are you addicted to femdom? Or have you finally discovered what lights you up, what quiets your mind, and what brings you back to your most raw, honest self? Maybe you've been chasing a high, or maybe you've just been following a truth you didn't know how to name until now. What matters most isn't the intensity of your craving, but your awareness of it. when you approach your submission with curiosity, intention, and choice, it's not addiction. I believe it's alignment. So, if this episode made you think, or you have some thoughts about what I said, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever wondered if your submission went too far? Do you feel like you have been addicted to a Dom or to me? Or even what part of Femdom pulls you in the most? Feel free to leave a comment, send me a message if you follow me on Loyal Fans, or come confess in my DMs there. Your story might help shape a future episode. And if you want to dive deeper into your cravings, mind control, ritual submission, or full-blown obsession, you can find exclusive erotic hypnosis and femdom content on my website, missbeatrix.com, but only come to me if you are coming with awareness and intention within yourself. So thank you for listening to the Slut Next Door. And until next time, keep craving consciously. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Slut Next Door, where we dive deep into the raw, unapologetic truths of human desire. If you loved what you heard today, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a juicy moment. Want to connect with me outside the podcast? Click the link in my bio, where you can find lots of juicy content and options. Until next time, I'm Beatrix Vale, your Slut Next Door, and I'll see you in the next episode.